Scottie, what can you tell us about Jahmyr Gibbs?
Say it again, please.
What can you tell us about Jahmyr Gibbs? What do you like about him?
First thing that we try to do in evaluating, especially when you are taking a guy in this round, but all rounds. But you want to make sure you do the character evaluation. And the first thing we say is that we just think that he's a fantastic young man that we're bringing to Detroit, and we just really liked him from a character standpoint. It stood out, and not only at the combine, but it also stood out, of course, when we had chances to sit down and talk and meet with him. So from that standpoint, just starting there, he not only checks the box there, but he's been phenomenal throughout this process. The second thing you talk about, now you're starting to talk about the football part of it, right? The first time I had a real chance to talk to him, I was really impressed with his overall football IQ, his understanding of protection, and how to get to it. We'll work on certain things there, of course, but I was really impressed with him and how he moved through understanding the roof and protection. He's been coached really well. Got a tremendous amount of respect, not only for both programs that he was at, but mainly the running back coaches that had him, Tashard Choice and Gillespie. A tremendous amount of respect for the way they coach. I know both of those guys, but and then moving to the football part of it, elite short area quickness, great contact balance, a weapon not only from the backfield, but he can also do things on the perimeter. But probably what's most impressive about him is that he is a guy that can carry the football in multiple schemes and run the ball well. And his burst, it shows on tape, of course. But you see some of the things that he does that's just natural that happens. But he was very consistent. If you look at the tape from Georgia Tech, moving on to to Alabama, one thing that you see, he was very tight on his tracks, meaning he was always where he was supposed to be, and that's really important as we look at continue to try to look at the process. And I think he'll continue to grow. Even his speed grew. As you look at his miles per hour on the field, he continued to mature. He's 21 years old, so he's still got a long way to go in the maturation process. But hopefully we can assist him to speed that up as quickly as we possibly can.
Scottie, it's been kind of a perpetual Christmas for you since you got here with these additions to your room. I'm just wondering, how does Jahmyr and David maybe complement each other with their skill sets?
I think that both of them have the ability to catch the football, and both of them have the ability both to run the ball from the backfield. So when you get guys with that capability, at both backs, now there's things that you can do with having them on the field, of course, together. You can have either one on the field. Feel really confident about playing these guys in multiple downs. So there's not one situation where we say, okay, we got to, this guy's going to take you to the ball if he's in. This guy's going to take you to the ball if he's in. They can do it all, first, second, and third down. So they will complement each other. The one thing that I like about this match, though, is that David, he's a veteran player, right? He's had a lot of carries. He understands the NFL. He understands professionalism. And then now you bring in a great character guy and you build with another great character guy. There's a great learning experience for both of them, really, in that process. So we're blessed from that standpoint. But that doesn't shock me with Brad and Dan and what they've preached since I first got here. It's been very clear there was a process that they wanted to stay in. They identified the players. I think they've done a very good job for our room, but not only for our room, but for this entire organization.
Coach, why was it important for you guys?
Well, I think that you got to look at it several ways. Like he's bringing a value also in the passing game that is a large value. And then you add that to what he can do from a dynamic standpoint in the run game. And at the end of the day, it is about value, right? And, it's one of those situations where, you looked at it and as Brad and Dan looked at it, there was a value that we saw in this young man. There was a value that they saw in him. And, we made the decision to go get him. And that value is on the player and what it can be for our team, right? So we placed a high value on what he can do from an explosive standpoint and creating more explosives, but not being limited to creating those explosives in the running game. So we see as a guy that probably, in my opinion, is the best space player in this draft and what he can do with the football. So, there's a tremendous amount of value for him as a football player and not only as just as a back.
You mentioned both David and Jameer can do it all, right? You don't have to change, I guess, the playbook or the offense. How valuable is that in, I guess, keeping defenses off on their toes when, you know, the guys can do the same thing and be interchangeable in that way?
Well, I think I mean, I think you just hit it. You answered it for me there a little bit. It will keep people honest. But the bigger part of all this too is that, look, we play 17 games, right? And everyone knows that in a 17-game process, you get banged a little bit, right? You might can play all 17 games, but the best they're going to ever feel is right now. So as we move through the season and it becomes week to week, I think those guys being able to do both, we can lighten the load, we can, raise the load, whatever, kind of how Ben and Dan see it. And I think that helps us and it helps the room as we continue to move forward.
You mentioned his character stood out. What stood out?
You know, during this process, what we found out is what I found out is that, we all have different ways that we grow up. I'm not going to speak about his family experience, but his family experience is his family experience, and he's came through it and he's continued to get better. When you talk to his coaches, they continue to talk about how he was able to come in to the University of Alabama and not miss a beat, because there are certain standards that are different from school to school, right? They did a good job at Georgia Tech of holding the standard. When he went to Alabama, he had to hold another standard. He was able to do it. And then just listening to him and talking about what he values. A lot of times you don't have to ask questions in this draft process. These players will either show you what they value, or in some way it'll come out what they value. And then I always like to look on draft night to see the people around. And tonight he had both parts of his family with him, and that made me feel really good, because those were the people that were with him the whole time. And at this point in time, they're still there. He still believes, so he's working really hard. But that character did show up in multiple locations.
You said best space player in the draft, in your opinion.
In my opinion.
I know Jameer is Jameer, and he is his own man, but I know coaches and scouts and GMs, they look for characteristics maybe they've seen in their past. Is there anybody you've coached or coached against that you see parts of his game in? The non-coaching me, yes. There's several people that may have similarities that are not just like him. The coach in me says, let's just wait before I can get my hands on him, and then I'll be able to give you a better opinion in like 15 years.